Hi, home cooks! Today I'm in the kitchen making an Italian-style lasagna al forno.
This recipe takes its time for the best flavors and texture. Made with slow-cooked bolognese-style beef ragu, creamy bechamel, and a rich, cheesy crust. The perfect meal to enjoy with family and friends.
This classic lasagna recipe is perfect if you're craving something comforting and full of flavor. It combines classic Italian techniques with simple, wholesome ingredients for a baked pasta dish that's rich and satisfying.
So let's get into the kitchen. This is how I make a classic Italian-style lasagna.
To start this recipe, I'm going to get started with the beef ragu, since it slow simmers for several hours. I'm first going to preheat a large Dutch oven to medium-low heat. Then dice very finely a quarter-pound of pancetta. And for this easy no-chop version, you're just going to quickly blitz it through the food processor. Now I can add a few tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil to the Dutch oven. Add in the pancetta and allow it to fry and release the fat into the pan. Give it a stir a few times to make sure everything is getting cooked down evenly. And while my pancetta is cooking away, I'm going to chop 1 shallot, 2 ribs of celery, and 2 carrots very finely. Or you can once again drop them into the food processor until you have a fine vegetable mixture. And if you don't have any shallots on hand, you can replace it with a half an onion. Now I'm going to add this to the pan with the pancetta and allow it to fry away in the fat for a few minutes. Then cover and allow the vegetables to cook and soften for about 8 to 10 minutes. Now that my vegetables have started to cook and soften, I'm going to add in the ground meat. To mine, I'm adding in 1 pound of ground beef and 1 pound of ground pork. Stir and break up any clumps of meat as it cooks. I'm cooking it just enough until the pink starts to disappear. Since my sauce is going to slow simmer for a few hours, there's no need to fully cook and brown the ground meat at this point. And now to deglaze the pan and add in even more flavor, I'm going to stir in 1 cup of red wine. Stir this into the meat and allow it to mix in any of the browned bits stuck to the bottom of the pan. Once the red wine is absorbed, I'm going to add in 1 can of tomato paste and 1 jar of tomato sauce. Something like passata is a great choice for this recipe. I had some jars of fresh pasta sauce that I had made from the garden, but you can use your favorite tomato sauce here. I'm just going to season it with a little bit of salt and pepper and stir to make sure everything is well incorporated. Now I can cover the pan and I'm just going to leave a little crack for some steam to escape. And I'm going to let the sauce simmer on low heat for 4 hours, giving it a check and stir a few times throughout the process. Lasagna al forno is typically made with this slow-cooked beef ragu, whereas normally American lasagna is typically made with ground beef and tomato sauce flavored with garlic and herbs. While I'm letting my sauce simmer away, I'm going to get started with my homemade pasta verde. You can absolutely use store-bought noodles for this recipe, so if you want to skip ahead, just check the timestamps below. To make this classic bright green pasta dough, to a large frying pan on medium heat, add a quarter pound of fresh spinach, or 2 large handfuls. I'm just going to stir it occasionally until it's reduced, soft, and wilted. This should only take a few minutes. I'm going to transfer the spinach from the pan and puree it with 1 or all 3 of the eggs with an immersion blender, or you could pop it in the food processor. Then on a clean counter, I'm going to add 1 pound of 00 flour. If all you have on hand is all-purpose, you can definitely still use that in this recipe. Make a large well in the center and add in the pureed spinach and 3 eggs. I'm going to whisk this together with a fork, incorporating a little bit of the flour as I go. I'm just going to keep mixing and adding in flour until I have a paste-like mixture. Then it's easiest to switch to your hands. Now you can start kneading the dough, adding in more flour as you go. Once the flour is incorporated, I'm going to knead the dough for about 6 to 8 minutes. If you find your dough is a little dry, just wet your hands with a little bit of water and continue to knead this into the dough until you have smooth, elastic, and slightly glossy dough ball. Then cover the dough with either a bowl or a moist kitchen towel and allow it to rest for 30 minutes. Now my pasta dough is ready to go, and I'm going to split it into 6 or 8 more manageable pieces. And then you can use either a pasta roller or a large rolling pin. If you're doing this by hand with a rolling pin, you're going to start at the center and roll towards the outer edges of the dough. Make sure to turn the dough around often to prevent sticking. Once the dough is about a 1/4 inch thick, you're going to fold it in half and roll it out again. Then you're just going to continue to turn and roll the dough out into a long rectangle until you have the desired thickness for your noodles. If you happen to have a pasta machine, you can start rolling the dough on the thickest setting. Then fold the dough in thirds and roll it out again. I like to do this step twice. After that, I'm going to continue to work the dough through the rollers, lowering the settings until I have the desired thickness I want for my noodles. I usually stop at the second smallest setting. To prepare these for layering into my lasagna, I'm going to bring a large pot of salted water to a boil. You can add in a few pasta sheets at a time, just make sure not to overcrowd the pot. I'm just going to let mine parboil for about 30 seconds and then remove them with some kitchen tongs and set them aside on a baking sheet until I'm ready to assemble the lasagna. And the last thing I need to make before assembly is the white layer. Lasagna al Forno is typically made with a creamy white béchamel sauce, whereas typically American lasagna is made with a thick layer of normally ricotta cheese. To make the béchamel, I'm going to grab my medium pot and preheat it to medium-low heat. Melt 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm going to remove it from the heat for a minute while I whisk in 1/3 cup of flour. Stir until you have a thick paste, which should take about 1 minute. Then, while whisking, I'm going to gradually add in half of the 2½ cups of milk until I have a smooth sauce. Then you can whisk in the rest of the milk along with 1/2 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Now I'm going to return this to the heat. Simmer, stirring often until the sauce starts to thicken. Once you start to see a few bubbles form, it should happen pretty quickly. And to finish it off, I'm going to season it with salt and pepper to taste. If you're preparing this sauce in advance and you're not quite ready to layer it into the lasagna, place a piece of plastic wrap directly on the surface. This will prevent a skin from forming. Now all the components are prepped and I'm ready to assemble the lasagna. I'm using a casserole dish with a relatively high side to make sure I can get all the layers piled high without bubbling over in the oven. Now I'm going to spoon enough of the beef ragù to just cover the bottom of the dish. This is going to prevent it from sticking to the bottom and is going to surround the whole dish in that rich sauce. And as you can see here, I've decided to start with the bechamel. Either is fine, but my preference is to start with the meat sauce. Now cover the bottom with a single layer of pasta sheets. You'll need to trim some of the noodles to fit the dish. Spread on a thin layer of the beef ragù and cover with another layer of pasta sheets. Then spread on a thin layer of the bechamel and sprinkle with a handful of grated Parmesan cheese. Repeat these layers, finishing with a layer of bechamel and Parmesan. You should have about 5 to 6 layers. I'm going to place this casserole dish on a baking sheet. This is going to prevent any spills in the oven. And my lasagna is ready to bake in my preheated 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius oven for 40 minutes or until the top is golden brown. Remove it from the oven and allow it to rest 20 minutes before serving. This hearty dish is the ultimate comfort food and a guaranteed crowd pleaser. It's full of deep, savory flavors that makes lasagna a beloved classic. This meal is worth every step, and leftovers taste even better the next day.
And as always, you can find a link to the full written recipe in the description box below.
Enjoy! If you're a fan of deliciously simple vintage recipes and old-fashioned skills, then you'll want to check out this next video. Thanks for stopping by.